Welcome to episode 4 of Take Charge of the Classroom, a web series designed to disrupt outdated behavior management models and help you create the classroom culture of your dreams. In this episode, we are looking at attention. How do we reinforce the correct actions with the power of our attention? It is the one offensive weapon that we have in this war against misbehavior, and what it does is it leverages social approval. And so it is kind of delicate. It does walk a fine balance, and it might go against a little bit of what you think is good classroom management, but we'll break that down in just a moment. So in the overall picture, we are in the attention, action, and attitude. If you read that right across, those are the three different parts of reinforcing. We're wanting to reinforce with the power of our attention, correct actions, and attitudes. But in this first wave through the immediate impact sequence, we are looking at teacher actions. What is the teacher doing? So in this episode, we're going to be looking at how the teacher points his or her attention and what that can do for student behaviors. So typical classroom management systems. Where do we usually fall? If you just were to survey 50 teachers, or maybe just go observe 50 random teachers, you would find that they would really fall on a continuum between two ends. On one end, you have the punishment. So punishment is, I'm going to design a series of intricate consequences that escalate. So it might start with a verbal warning, then I'm going to write your name down somewhere, whether it's on the board, in a planner, in an agenda, and then I'm going to call your parents, and then, dun, 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 you're going to the principal's office. And so we publish this set of rules and this set of consequences, and we hope that somewhere along the line that the consequences get too big for the kids, and they back down from their negative behaviors because they don't want to face that next consequence. Well, if you have any experience in the classroom, you know that that doesn't always work. It actually doesn't even work a whole lot of the time. So it's a lot of work, and it doesn't even meet the threshold of effectiveness that would even make it worth our time. On the other end, we have reward. So some teachers are wanting to focus on the positive, which is a good thing, but they do so with an external system of rewards, whether it be a token economy, classroom bucks, maybe dojo points, or you're just giving them actual trinkets, whether it be a prize box, something like that. You're giving them privileges in the classroom. It might be extra recess or sitting on the floor, but you're basically rewarding students for correct behavior, and that's moving in the right direction. But the problem with this is it keeps everything external. So you have to be the one that's constantly chasing these kids around, noticing them, doing good things, but then also it starts to lose its effectiveness, and you have to keep upping your game because the students start to get comfortable with the level of rewards that they're receiving, and they're not as enticing. And so you have to bump things up and bump things up. It reaches what we call a satiation effect. After a while, they're just like, I don't really care too much about that extra recess or that homework pass or that extra pencil. I'm just going to sit here and talk with my friends because that's more important to me. So we have to keep upping with pizza parties and all kinds of crazy stuff. Both of those, unfortunately, use fear. Now, the punishment is pretty clear. We're using the fear of the principal or fear of the parents. But the reward system also uses fear to try to manipulate students. It's the fear of not getting the reward, of not getting the points, of possibly getting the points taken away, of not getting the pencil or the prize out of the prize box. And anytime we leverage fear, that is a short-term win, but we have a long-term problem. Because using fear gets us into our emotions, into our limbic system, possibly even into our amygdala. And that is not a place we want to go. We do not want to access fear and anxiety that creates a cold culture in our classroom, and that is not what we want. Now, most teachers are in between both of those two extremes, and we just end up fussing at kids. I know when I was in the classroom, long before I learned about this take charge model, this is what I ended up doing. It was a fussing system. So basically, the students would misbehave. I would just call them out, and I would ask them to stop, tell them to stop, maybe raise my voice a little bit. For the most part, it kind of worked. It made it a little bit of a negative classroom, but I had a good enough relationship with them where they would kind of want to do what I asked them to do. but it required me to just keep nagging them all day long when they were doing things incorrectly. There was no large system that I knew of at the time that could work. And for the most part, it's better than chasing them around with dojo points or threatening them with a principal, but it's still not effective. So what is effective? Well, let's get off that continuum between punishment and reward. Here's the secret, guys. Your attention. Your social approval. And remember, everything is based off relationships. So none of this works if you don't have a strong relationship with your students. Because if they don't care about you, then they're not going to care about your approval and your attention. But the secret here is that you direct and withhold your attention based on student behavior. It's called differential social attention. And it is shown to be effective with large groups of students in many different areas, and this comes out of behavioral psychology, because we all want to be included. Every student wants to be included and connected. That is a biological, physiological reality. And so what you do is you give your attention. With it comes the power of your approval as the teacher, as the one that they all like. So you have to build that strong relationship with them first. You give your attention and your approval to the students that are meeting your expectations. Everyone's going to want that. You withhold your approval, you withhold your attention from the students that are not meeting your expectations. You're not nagging the students that are doing something incorrect. If you've got 3 students talking when they should be working, you don't call them out on it, you don't nag them, you don't fuss at them. What you do is you find 2 or 3 students that are quietly working and you give them a little bit of praise. You name them and you say they are working quietly. And you just give them your attention and you give them your social approval. And pretty soon they will know, all your students will know, that if they want your attention, if they want your approval, they're going to have to meet your expectations. And we all want to have that approval. We all want to feel like we fit in and we belong. And that is a very powerful weapon. And so what this is called, differential social attention, what it does is it eliminates shaming and nagging. Because if I'm looking at 3 kids that are talking when they should be working, rather than shaming them, calling them out in front of their peers, which is going to cause an emotional reaction, it might get them to comply, but they're not going to be working. They're going to be fuming on the inside of how unfair it is that I just called them out when there's 2 other kids behind that are talking but weren't called out. We know how kids can sometimes take these small things, right? And they can blow them up into large things. It's because we're activating their emotions and we're activating their anxiety and their fear, and that's not what we want to activate. So rather than calling out those 3 kids, I'm going to notice some students that are doing the right thing, and I'm just going to give them my social approval. I'm going to call them out by name. I'm going to describe what they're doing, and that is going to send the message without shame that these are the kids I'm paying attention to. These are the kids that I'm noticing. And it minimizes that emotional dysregulation because I'm not throwing the kids that are misbehaving into their emotional state. I'm just going to ignore their attention-seeking behavior or their aberrant behavior, but I'm going to very vocally and very actively give my attention to the students that are doing the right thing. And pretty soon, those students that are talking are going to want to be noticed. They're going to want to be included. They're going to want to have your attention. And they're going to figure out the only way to do that is to follow your expectations. It creates a culture of safety in your classroom. It takes a little while for your students to get used to it because it might not be something that they've ever experienced before. Most of them are used to the fear, the punishment, or the nagging. But it creates this culture of safety because they know that if they do misbehave, they're not going to get called out on it. They're simply going to be have your attention withheld from them, and they're going to have a chance to improve it. And then when you do notice that they do stop talking, that's when you give them your attention. And you notice them by name, you describe what they're doing, and you give them that verbal praise that they need and that social approval that they need. It manufactures success because you're not nagging. When we're nagging students, we're not telling them what to do. We're simply describing what they should stop doing. When we are giving our social attention to the students that are doing the correct things, we are constantly putting out into the air, this is what it takes to be successful. This is what you should be doing. And it helps students have that safety to where if they're not meeting your expectations, it doesn't take long for them to figure out what will meet your expectations. It's not a mystery because you're constantly verbalizing about students that are doing the right thing. Now, in order for this to work, you need to make your positive attention as fast, predictable, and consistent as negative attention. All behavior is communication, and a lot of times it's attention seeking. And it simply is shouting, notice me, see me. I am a person. I want you to see me. That's what a lot of our aberrant behavior is in the classroom. It's just attention seeking. So a lot of students will just stick with the negative actions because they know they can get your attention. They know all they have to do is drop the F-bomb and they'll get a whole bunch of attention. Now, it might not be good attention, but at least they'll get your attention. But if you make your positive attention as predictable and fast as consistent, that's all they want is your attention. And so if you give your social approval, differentiate it so that you're withholding it from those that are not meeting your expectations, giving it to those that are meeting your expectations. Once that's consistent and predictable, they'll realize, you know what, it's easier just to kind of meet the expectations because then I get what I need. That social connection, that part of belonging that is a part of every one of our students' makeups. They want to connect, they want to belong, and you have the power of your attention to change their behavior simply by withholding and directing your social approval. So thank you for joining me on this episode. You can learn more about this. You can learn more about the book on my website, aarondaffern.com/takecharge, and you can email me or follow me at Aaron Daffern.